A wonderful good morning to everyone, and with that, welcome to a new crypto update video. Bitcoin at 76,800 US dollars. Not much change compared to yesterday. But globally speaking, not much has really changed either, to be honest. Once again, there are, yes, tensions between the US and Iran, so business as usual, just as we've been seeing every day lately. The price of oil is climbing back above the $97 mark. We have a strengthening dollar and a yen that is still catastrophically weak. Because the Bank of Japan has kept its interest rates unchanged for now, we're going to take a calm look at all of this now. But before we get started, as always, feel free to leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and of course, feel free to join the free Telegram talk and Signal group. If you're interested in updates, news, and signals, feel free to join. You'll find the link for that for free down in the video description. Even when I make stock purchases, like here with MatPace, which is already up 11%, you'll find out about all of that in this Telegram group. And you can also trade all of this on my partner exchange, WEEX. So feel free to sign up using the link below in the video description. There you'll also get a reduction on your fees. That way you'll do a bit better. And of course, you'll also be supporting the channel. So feel free to simply sign up and check it out using the first link below in the video description. All right, let's get started. So as I said, Bitcoin is at $76,800. The price action is still very, very weak, I have to say at this point. If we take a closer look, we can see that especially the spot volume has dropped significantly, meaning there have been a lot more sell-offs. Also, futures volume is also dropping a bit, but not as aggressively in the end as the spot volume. On the heat map, at least in the short term, we can also see a small cluster towards 80K overall, but there is clearly much more liquidity below us. Also on the actual heat map, that is on high block, if we look at all the data here over 7 days, there's a large cluster at 80, then two or rather three large clusters at 75, 70, and 62,500 US dollars. Those are the most important liquidation zones. But what could bring us down there? If we take a look at the first news here, oil prices are rising while the US is reviewing Iran's proposal, but the Strait of Hormuz remains blocked. That means the Strait of Hormuz, which is honestly the most important factor in this whole war, is still closed. That means access to fertilizers, to whatever goods, services, etc., oil, gas, is still cut off. No ships are passing through there. Neither the US, who claim they have control over it, nor Iran are letting anything through. That's why Brent crude oil is already trading at $109 per barrel again on Monday after rising by 2.8%. That's not good. The higher the oil price, the higher the inflation, of course, and the greater the pressure on governments to possibly intervene sooner or later with interest rate hikes. That's why we'll take a look over there right away. Let's start with the news. Let's take a look over at Japan. In Japan, in my opinion, they surprisingly kept their interest rates unchanged at 0.75%. But apparently, they are pretty divided about this whole mess. The vote result of 6-3 represents the biggest split ever seen under the current administration. Kasuida, the governor's term, points to increasing pressure to normalize policy. The yen strengthened after the announcement, briefly breaking through the 159 yen per dollar mark and moving further away from the level that prompted the government to intervene and support the yen 2 years ago. What are we talking about here? We're talking about the carry trade, or rather about a possible intervention that would have to take place with the JPY. To be honest, the article is much more positive than what the chart shows, because just look at this. Yes, it's moving away a little bit, but that's nothing yet. Actually, nobody cares, because the yen itself, if we take a look, is still catastrophically low. That means the Bank of Japan will have to raise its interest rates sooner or later, because we still have a very weak yen. And right before the meeting, which I also find very interesting, Japan is ready at any time to intervene in the foreign exchange market, said Katayama in front of the Bank of Japan. So even before the Bank of Japan had said anything at all, like, yes, we will keep the interest rates unchanged, there was already talk that we might possibly see some interventions in the market. And of course, this also refers to the carry trade. You know, the carry trade, that whole topic is far from being off the table. But more important for the global economy, as I said, is still the whole issue with the oil price, which just keeps shooting up. As long as the oil price keeps rising like this, we will continue to have problems, and tomorrow the Fed will make its announcement. There will be no interest rate hike, so it would be a huge surprise if the Fed raised interest rates tomorrow. But I'll put it this way, and I've already said this in the live stream, speaking of live streams, tonight at 8 o'clock. We're doing a live stream tonight at 8 o'clock, not at 7 anymore, because, as I said, the weather is nice outside, and I think people are much more interested if we just start at 8 instead of 7. So anyone who's interested, tonight before the Champions League will be done before that. Feel free to join the live stream tonight at 8 o'clock. Anyway, what I wanted to say is the longer the Strait of Hormuz remains closed, the higher the likelihood that we simply won't get an interest rate cut this year or might even see another rate hike. For Bitcoin, this still means more of a sideways price action, which is what we're seeing at the moment. The volume is disastrous, even if we take a look at the spot order book. Yes, there have been a few buys coming in again, as well as some sells. But personally, I still find the volume to be far, far too low. So this doesn't suggest that we're about to see a sustainable big fat rally. My opinion that we could go up towards 83, 84,000 US dollars hasn't changed. That still remains more or less the primary scenario, that we could slowly be moving in that direction now, even though the volume is so disastrous. But as long as no bad news comes in, and that would be, for example, the resumption of the war or something like that, I can easily imagine Bitcoin moving somewhere into these areas up here and then seeing the next sell-off. But I'm not really convinced of that yet. Sooner or later, that one piece of news will come that brings us down, not just because hedge funds keep selling, as I've already shown you in the chart, but also simply because of what's happening globally at the moment. 70% of farmers say that right now they're simply not getting what they actually need, also due to the Strait of Hormuz, of course. So you can already see it's a global issue that's happening right now. And sooner or later, that tipping point will come when it's too late. But until then, the stock markets are still enjoying all-time highs. Otherwise, from a trading perspective, I'm still holding back. The short-long position remains unchanged, and the next short is planned around 82 to 84K. Let's move on to the altcoins. What's happening there? Ethereum has also been rejected again, and the price action is catastrophic. No need to even talk about it. Solana is absolutely dead. XRP is absolutely dead. That's what we YouTubers are having to deal with a bit at the moment. Or rather, I'd say it's more the traders, because otherwise it's pretty boring. Let's move on to the traditional markets. That means we'll start with gold. Gold, slight sell-off now ahead of all the interest rate decisions coming up, or rather with Japan having stayed the same for now and the US following tomorrow evening. Silver, same story, also a sell-off for now, but for me this is all just preparation for the next big fat candle to the upside. Meanwhile, the dollar is slightly rising again. Of course, the Bank of Japan is keeping its interest rates unchanged for now. If the dollar continues to rise now, for me that's still an indication, and that's why this zone up here remains. I don't care, we can keep drawing it like this, because sooner or later Japan will intervene up here if the dollar moves into this territory again. But we only see such levels if some kind of crisis is looming again, because otherwise, why would the dollar rise? A strong dollar isn't good for everyone. As long as the dollar stays low, stocks will continue to rise for now, because as I said, there's no real value, so people prefer to move back into the stock markets. If the dollar rises, then it's exactly the opposite again. Money is pulled out of stocks and put back into the dollar, and then possibly we can segue over to government bonds, which just keep rising and rising and rising. I expect today is Tuesday, right? Normally today is Taco Tuesday. I'm expecting some news to come out that will, on the one hand, bring government bonds down and maybe even strengthen the dollar a bit again. But as things stand right now, just look at this. We can also take a look over at Japan. The way the markets have reacted to this, it's catastrophic for Japan. And it's the same story, of course, for the US with 4.35% on the 10-year bonds. That's not good. And maybe just keep this in mind. This is just my own opinion, but I see problems coming our way as soon as we approach 5% here. If the 20 and 30-year bonds move toward 5%, that means we can draw a line exactly at 5% here. We've been there quite a few times in the past. But I see problems coming our way if we cross this blue line here. Let's see what happens, but keep this in mind, because in the past this was always the point where there was a massive rejection. Keep it in mind. In any case, let's move over to the traditional markets. That means the DAX is reacting well since we got our 5 in. Now, it should definitely form some kind of subordinate ABC. Dow Jones still hasn't hit a new all-time high, still in the ABC. It bothers me. I'll be honest with you. It still bothers me that we haven't formed a new all-time high here and that the volume is clearly declining. This isn't a normal push that we're seeing in the markets right now. Nasdaq is now moving more and more into the sell zone. That means here too, I'm slowly but surely going to start preparing my shorts. 27,500 to 28,700 points is an absolute short zone for me, at least for now. S&P 500 still in ABC, volume is catastrophic, there's no real price action, and the volatility index is still moving sideways. That's all I can say at the moment. Otherwise, individual stocks are pumping. Nvidia has reached a new all-time high again. Let's see if I'll also take a short position here, but I'm not quite sure yet. I'm still watching. because as I said, I'm already short on the S&P 500 and otherwise the other stocks are running. With NewScale, I'm now waiting for the final breakout. I'm already long, but here too, I'm definitely hoping for a 50 to 100% move. We had sold part of Alphabet again, but for me, it's still ABC. So basically, everything remains unchanged everywhere, you have to say. Government bonds are still very, very high, and in my opinion, too high. Something is bound to happen there sooner or later, possibly even in the next 24 hours. Tomorrow, the Fed is coming as well. We'll go over everything again calmly this evening during our live stream at 8 o'clock. I'll repeat it again, 8 o'clock, not 7 o'clock. Now, for the summer, we're changing the times a bit just so you can, let's say, enjoy your evening as well. Otherwise, that's it from my side for sure. I wish you all a wonderful day. We'll talk again this evening at 8 o'clock for the live stream. Until then, ciao, ciao, and as always, stay crypto.